when Battlestate Games announced they were going to be adding post-effects adjustments to Escape from Tarkov, I'd got one burning question that I held in because I wanted to see how they were going to address the one reoccurring issue that I see in Escape from Tarkov. I use the word issue loosely, as I personally don't have a problem with it. It's the use of desaturation in Escape from Tarkov in an attempt to convey the sense of dread. Something that feels an artistic choice, but a lot of players overlook because presumably they're not used to the notion of something like that being included in a tactical shooter. If you've played Stalker, you'll be familiar with the concept of using desaturation in order to convey the feeling of unaimable dread. I've suspected for a long time that a lot of the players who don't like the game when it is desaturated don't realise that it's actually intentional. They think it's some sort of problem with the game or something that's not been configured correctly, rather than it being a completely intentional design artistic choice. Presumably to emulate that Stalker like feeling, the sense that you get when running through the zone fighting for your life, and they try to give that constant sort of pressure hanging over your character's head as he works his way through the irradiated zone. For me personally, if that is what Battlestate's going for, I think they're nailing it pretty well when they use the desaturation to convey that, but I get that artistic choices aren't necessarily conveyed, possibly. It's one of those games because it sits in a unique spot between like a survival shooter RPG and a sort of a milsim tactical shooter. There's like a fine line in the middle where there's a crossover between the transition from one to the other, right? And that I think that desaturation to convey that sense of dread distinctly belongs in the RPG aspect of the game as opposed to in the sort of the milsim aspect of the game. But this is ultimately the reason for this video is people, I think a lot of the people, I should say, that have tried to, if you take away the people that are suffering with color blindness that have tried to use third-party programs like Reshade in order to fix the problem, or people who may have like a poor quality monitor, or people who just try and use it to cheat, because let's face it, there's a lot of people out there, as much as they complain about, oh, it's for X, Y, Z, whatever legitimate reason, they're literally just trying to get whatever tactical advantage they can possibly muster out of the game. Now, don't get me wrong, there are definitely some issues when it comes to clarity, because for some reason Battlestate games are absolutely obsessed with fog in games. My personal experience with fog in computer games is it's usually used to hide an issue with like render distance and LOD and that sort of thing, which isn't really so much of a problem now, especially since the inclusion in 12.0 with grass textures, right? But I guess that again ties back to the whole artistic interpretation and trying to convey certain emotions inside the game, artistic license, if you will. But yeah, so there's still a lot of people out there that genuinely use programs like Reshade in order to try and fix their issues, but don't actually know how to use the software properly because they're not professionally trained to be color graders and don't understand where the actual problem is arising from within the game. And so they immediately they reach straight for the vibrancy, straight for the shadows, and start cranking everything up, and they blur out all of the colors, and it looks like a radioactive zone where the freaking sky is on fire, and there's freaking just saturation. It is literally overuse of all of the wrong adjusters and not fixing the saturation, and it's just a case of sliding one slider up, which is easy enough to do. You can create, well, it's not, you can't fix it in Escape from Tarkov. All you can do is the new color effects and sliders will allow you to do crank up. This is another thing, I don't know why they've done it. They call colorfulness is actually the vibrancy adjuster. I don't know why they've called it colorfulness. Maybe it's just for ease of understanding of general users. But I've gone off on a complete tangent. My question was, are Battlestate going to leave in the desaturation effect that they use to imitate cloudy days? So whenever it gets rainy or foggy or the weather's shit, what they do is they reduce the saturation over a period of time, so you don't really notice it as it gradually happens until you're in the middle of this really murky, muddy, really hard to define anything kind of environment, which I personally love. I think it's great. It adds so much mood, especially when like the weather lines up and you get freaking thunder and there's rain coming down and then the action kicks in and it's all like a perfect storm, right? Which is what I feel like. I could be wrong, don't get me wrong. This is just, again, artistic interpretation of the situation. I feel like that's what Nikita's going for in trying to create those really heavy moods when the rain is hammering down. You can just about hear someone walking because the rain, like, don't get me wrong, the rain's really annoying when you're trying to listen to someone walking through and you can't hear it because it's just, you've been there, you play Tarkov, you know what I'm talking about. But at the same time, all of those characteristics draw away from a milsim, but add so much to an RPG first-person style shooter, right? Which is why I think it's kind of a storm in a teacup of trying to get it all to mash together. What brings me back to my question, and I keep going off on a tangent, I know. I wondered if they were going to remove the desaturation, which was I think a lot of the issue that a lot of players may not have realized was the issue as to why they'd go in and they'd crank up all of these these settings. They'd try and make their game look nice. And then over a period of time, it would look even shitter because what's happened is they've jumped into an offline raid and they've configured all of their settings in Reshade, or they've pulled in a lot from frickin' Adobe or something like that. Got it all looking what they think is like nice and acceptable and good. And then left that raid, jumped into a new raid, carried on playing. And then over a period of time, the desaturation has been, or I should say the saturation has been injected back into the footage. So all of those greens that they'd rebalanced are now like bright radioactive green, and they don't know why. Because, well, as I said, if you're not used to color grading, you wouldn't notice it, and you wouldn't understand why. And I've noticed it because of doing footage for Tarkov and sitting down and recording stuff, and then watching my footage back, and then seeing the color drain out of a picture or the color being added back in. I can show you how to fix it in another video if you are interested, but there is no easy fix for it. It takes time to put adjustment layers in place in order to take the edge off the desaturation as it happens over a period of time, and there is no clean cut. You can't just hit a button and like, oh, I fixed the desaturation issue. It doesn't work like that. There is no easy fix for it. It takes time and effort to fix that problem, which is a color balance problem. And adding, as I suspected, adding post effects adjustments, like nobody can tell you, oh, this is the best post effects adjustment, this and this, and you should do this and that, and this is, like, anybody who puts in a title the best or the optimum or any, just no, just fucking no, because the only way you can do it is based on your monitors, right? It's based on the monitor that you're looking at, your eyes, you looking at it. My suggestion is, and again, if you want a more in-depth video on this, I can do it, would be to add a little bit, mostly focusing on saturation, but add a little bit of different colors, right? Because the more you add, the less realistic it looks and the more messed up it'll look in the long run, right? The more you adjust the footage, the more you'll get artifacts within the footage, because it's the nature of effects adjustment and even photography to a certain degree. If you don't get the clarity right on the picture, for example, you'll get a lot more speckled artifacts. So if you look at your gun, if you crank like the clearance all the way to the maximum, anything that suggests that it's going to create more clarity and sharpness within the game, right? Crank it all the way up, then look at this, like any part of your gun, you'll notice all of the little grainy textures and the artifacts in there. That's just simply because when you ramp up settings, right? When you ramp up those settings, there's a cause and effect of what's going to happen, right? And that's the backlash from it. So that's where you've got to take everything back to zero and just tweak it a little bit, right? Add a little bit of more color, add a little bit more saturation, add a little bit more clarity. It's a question of where you draw the line between, I need to get, it's my cat, where you need to get as much tactical advantage as you can versus making the game look pretty. Only you can decide that. Be realistic with yourself and be like, okay, I want this to be as clear as I can, so I can see the outlines of everything, the movement of everything, and see everything, and like the matrix, zeros and ones, right? But only you know that. Only you know how you want to do your adjustment setting. Now, this might sound like I'm ragging on Battlestate's edition of the post effects. It's not at all. in me ragging on anything that they've done. I think it's really cool, and it's really nice because something like that they've added in means you can do micro adjustments, right? You can do little tiny micro adjustments in order to make it complement your monitor, because there's so many variations that can affect the color outcome of your game, right? So you can make little tiny micro adjustments that will affect your monitor, but ultimately you can't remove that one massive gaping problem because it's an artistic choice, right? You may not agree with it, which is fine, but that desaturation effect, which so many people have complained about, is an artistic choice that's built into the game. It's like literally baked into it. There is nothing you can do to stop that desaturation apart from every time it becomes desaturated, spending time to then adjust it back. You'll be doing it constantly throughout raids, right? And you may not see it for like loads of raids. I had to run a few raids before I could establish. This is why this video is so late coming out rather than on like patch day, right? I had to run a few raids before I got some bad weather and I could see and compare the effect of the new post effects adjustments versus what was already like in place beforehand, right? I'm probably not in this video going to explain too much detail about the color adjustment. I just wanted to acknowledge anybody that's out there sitting out there right now thinking, okay, well this hasn't fixed what was my issue. I just wanted to sort of put some light on it, right? Acknowledge that why the post effects, why you may be looking at it and thinking you weren't going to get as much, or you're not getting as much out of it as you initially thought you were going to get, right? That isn't to say it's bad, obviously. I've waffled on for quite a while, so I'm going to draw a line in it on this one. Let me know in the comments your opinions, thoughts, feelings, if you've noticed it as well, if this has actually helped you fix that issue, or not so much fix it as understand better what the problem was in the first place, right? And together we can work on some concepts on where you'd like to go from here on this particular topic. I've got a few other things I'm going to be covering as well with regards to the new patch, especially the flea market. But anyway, that's me done. I'm going to check out and I will catch you in the next one.